All right, I'm here with Luke Sholl, who is the lead actor in The Big Break. I've done 11 of these meetings now, and it is now your turn to interview me.
Yeah, the tables have turned. Avi Setton, it's your turn. Um, Writer, director, producer, cinematographer,
Yes.
editor.
Not really editor anymore.
You did a first pass at it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I convinced real editors.
so, so this is a huge undertaking wearing all those hats. I mean, the amount of work it goes in just to write and rewrite and then coordinate everything, to produce it, to direct it, to be setting up all the shots. It's a lot going on all the time. And it's been a year since you shot this.
Yeah.
Uh, it's an insane amount of work, right? Why? The first question is why?
Um, yeah, it sounds a little crazy. I've sorry, I just had a son and I can hear him crying in the background, but I think my wife got him. Um,
There's your why.
yeah, who was half of the crew. Yeah, it's a crazy undertaking. I think it was a series of just compromises, basically just going down the line of coming to the realization that the only way I was going to really make a movie uh, the way I wanted to, or really kind of any like feature film, was just if I did it myself. And it felt like the right timing and all the elements were aligned. So it's something I've always wanted to do, and it's something I dreamed of from when I was 16, 17, 18 through my 20s. Something I kind of came to terms with in my 30s that like maybe this isn't gonna be my path. And then basically like before filming, a couple years leading into filming, trying to make slightly more um basically coming to the realization that I want to make films, and that is where my passion lies. And trying to do slightly more ambitious projects. And those kind of like caving in on me to the point where it's just like, all right, I'm going to write something that I know like it's going to get done no matter what. I'm not going to let anything stop me. And that's what this movie was.
When you say the elements were aligned at this particular point in time, what do you mean by that?
That's a good question. I don't know that they were aligned actually, or that they ever would have been. What I will say is I had written a script for the first time that I was really proud of, and um, I knew I could film it because it's really just four characters in one location. Um, I knew it was like actually something that could be done. So it's less about the timing, I guess, and more about getting to a point with my writing where I felt like this was achievable.
I see. And so I know you've mentioned to me in the past, like you went through a phase in your life where all you were doing, you're just writing screenplay after screenplay.
It's my
And
20s.
so is that what you mean? Like you got to a point where you became confident enough with the what you're producing, like I can actually make something like this, I'd be proud of it.
Yeah, I think from like pretty much the ages of like 16 to like 30, I pretty much wrote in screenplay format in one way or another every day of my life, more or less. That was because a lot of the films I was writing were very experimental, and it's just not the sort of thing that I was going to sell. Um, Probably not enticing enough to raise funds for, especially like where independent movies have gone over the last decade. Uh, so I was kind of getting my hours in. And then in my 30s, I had like a really kind of stark turn in my. I at that point I'd left LA and was starting to like rethink my life. So I took a break from it, which I actually think might have been the best thing I'd ever done. And then when I went to write this, I was very scared because I had written so many scripts and none of them had gotten made, and it was very hard for me to like put in work when I knew it wouldn't lead to anything concrete and finished that I could show people. Yes, there was a script there, but none of my scripts were meant to be final as a script. I always wanted to turn them into films. So I think I had to tell myself that there was no way I was going to write another script. I had to convince myself. There was no way I was going to write another script that wouldn't get made. That I was absolutely certain I was going to make it no matter what.
And how did you hold yourself accountable to that?
By stripping down the story to like what I knew I could get. Um, like four actors, one location. Uh, I'd become comfortable enough with my equipment, which is kind of a separate story, but that is kind of what I was doing a lot of my late 20s, 30s. A lot of the equipment we shot on, I bought like 10 years ago, and um, at least the camera and lenses. And so I just become accustomed to being like a one man show in a sense. I used to travel a lot uh, to make like marketing type videos. It was just me, and I would bring this like giant luggage. It's very hard to explain. I don't even know. Uh,
All your gear, you travel with it.
yeah, it's just this absolutely enormous piece of luggage with four other pieces of luggage inside of it, and it was my camera, accessories, like sound stuff, a tripod, lighting. And so I got very used to like setting up quickly, shooting fast, doing lighting, sounds, all that kind of set up myself with a very manual camera. So yeah,
And I mean, like in this day and age, we have so many distractions, right? We have social media, TikTok, and actually, that's a theme in the movie.
yeah.
Um, I'm curious, like, you finally made yourself do this. Like, how did you battle all those distractions and, maybe laziness or just anything that could keep you from doing it, procrastination? How did you get through that and finally do something? Because I know it's something I struggle with myself is, you know, just getting a project done when there's so many things that can pull your focus.
I think again, it's like I can't emphasize how much this was like 20 years in the making, where it was I really had to convince myself that I wasn't going to start it, write anything, unless I knew I was going to see it through. And that took, you know, 12, 13, 14 scripts, many attempts at making a feature from when I graduated college all the way up until like my 30s, and even then trying to do like other types of projects. I just had a lot of I wrote a lot of material that just never materialized, and um, it like weighs on you. And I think it's you just get to a certain point, or at least I got to a point where it's just like there is I just can't let anything stop this project from happening. And that mentality mixed with the fact that Tanya, my wife, was very supportive and like helping me make this come about and was going to work on the movie. And I knew that like I knew it could happen even if she was the only crew member. Luckily, Rupa came on and really really helped bring this to another level from the filmmaking perspective, despite him having no film background. But yeah, I knew it could be done, and that was really the trick. Um, I had never really written something where I was 100% certain that I could do it pretty much by myself with people I know, resources I have, and like I was 100% certain. And so I just never there were a lot of moments of doubt, but I just kept reassuring myself that I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to make this. And at least I get to say I made a movie. We knew at the time that Tanya was pregnant. I was like, for my son, I know soon I'm going to be very busy. I wanted just one last chance to see if this could be my career. It's what I always wanted. Um, so yeah,
And
it's
it sounds like you made it like, one of the things they talk about with goals is like make it attainable. So this was like a
yeah,
single location, very low budget,
yeah,
hired people you knew, kept it really small and doable. So it sounds like that was a major part of like what made it actually work, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I still think there's this whole other element that like this kind of magic happened. I definitely believed in the script and felt like I had good material that uh, was like a culmination of my writing. Um, but I do think, I had written at least Doug and Travis's roles. Chris is the only person I wrote the script for. I wrote pretty much all of these parts with people in mind. And Chris is the only one who actually started from like the inception of the script to coming on board as Doug. Um, but that was also a part of it is I thought at least that like I would have people like available. There turned out to be some complexities, but that ended up bringing you on board. It ended up bringing Trevor on board. Uh, I didn't really realize how like helpful Rupak was going to be. I didn't realize how good you guys were going to kind of get along and just there was this whole magic that happened, I think, that I really hadn't anticipated. I was
Yeah.
hopeful it wasn't going to be a complete disaster, but I didn't think I was going to spend the next year of my life like trying to see this through.
Yeah. And you mentioned the pregnancy. So your
Yeah.
wife Tanya was pregnant throughout the shoot,
Yes.
and which was a secret. The cast didn't know. Um, why was it a secret? Did you want it to make sure it was going to be a healthy pregnancy first, or
Yeah.
you didn't want people to worry about her working long hours and being tired, or
No, like it was early on.
yeah,
We wanted to make sure it was going to be a healthy pregnancy.
gotcha.
So it was only a few months in.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of funny moments there. I don't know if that had any with you, but I remember Tim specifically asking me, "Are you ever going to have kids?" And that was a very awkward conversation
Yeah.
to try to fumble through. And Rupak and I talked about this a little bit in our interview, where there were lots of hints. Actually, I don't know if it was in the interview, but I talked to him about this, where he was like, in hindsight, I saw all these things uh, like we had a drink at the after the shoot. I think you were gone at this point. It was just the three of us, me, Tanya, and Rupak, and Tanya didn't have a drink, and like there were little things that were suspect.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
you know,
Um, and you also mentioned this. Okay, so you kind of grew up in somewhat in the business. Like you had a small part in Wet Hot American Summer as a stand-up.
yeah,
Um, so you initially wanted to be an actor, and
yeah,
then you went to film school, NYU, which I was fortunate enough to be in one of your projects like 16 years ago.
yeah,
Um,
which I never really.
and yeah, and then then you left the business. You went and worked for a tech company, Google, right?
Yeah.
Um, when you did that, did you feel like you just needed a break, or you needed to make money, or you you thought that would be your career, or what was going on in your head with that?
Well, first it was like a series of happy accidents, I think, in a lot of ways that brought me down there. But also in the time from film school to working in tech, I had lived in LA for a few years, tried to work in film. Uh, I did work in film. I mean, I worked on like reality TV series. I worked as a script supervisor, as a grip. Like I had a lot of like just kind of every type of role you could find on commercials, TV shows, some independent movies. So I did that lifestyle and realized how far away that was from like wanting to actually make my own films. So I realized that just wasn't for me. So I ended up going back to school where I studied English literature and taught like English and film at Lehigh University, where I got my master's. And it was during that time that I had a friend working at Google for the VR team, and basically through that, I started coming in shooting like videos. A lot of this was with this same equipment, and I had already kind of uh, made myself very like quick to set up and useful with like this equipment with projects I was doing at Lehigh. And they would call me in once in a while to just make a video or shoot. They were, when VR was starting, it was a lot of tech people, and they didn't have any film like there were very few people with any film insight. And I think as VR developed, they realized, hey, we should probably get people who like actually understand filmmaking. And so I was just kind of lucky enough to like be a part of that. But yes, it was definitely like I was pretty much broke my whole life, and definitely like getting having some money, getting validation, having like a real career was just kind of like a shock for me after working in LA and struggling there and being essentially like an adjunct professor. So it was a huge life change for me. But it wasn't,
Yeah,
yeah, it ultimately wasn't very fulfilling in the end. But it also coincided with like VR not really being taking off. I was never really interested in VR. Um, but that's what got me there. And
So it was after that experience that you're like, okay, I'm just going to make my own thing. I'm going to finally do it. And
um, there was a series of like still quite a bit from there where first I had to like leave the city and like I was working in New York at that point in my life. So there was a series of like events that yeah, I think it's just compromise after compromise. I came back, thought I might write a novel at one point. I designed some board games. I had a lot of different like career paths that could have, but it was just it was constantly nagging at me. Um, like I knew what I really wanted to do was make films, and it just took me a while to get there. But yeah.
yeah,
Um, but to answer the first part of your question, I wouldn't say I grew up in the business, but I have my brother is like 7 years older than me, and he was in film, interested in film from a very young age. My mom is a writer and very she's a novelist, but she's very like culturally aware. So I had a lot of influence um, at a very young age, and was grew up relatively close to New York, so I could go to auditions. So that was really like, and as when you're a kid, the only real thing you can think about when it comes to movies is acting. Because I'm talking like
yeah.
8, 9 years old. Yeah,
And you see that and you're like, I want to do that. And then
exactly.
at what point did you realize, oh, I'd rather be behind the camera?
This was when I was 14. A family friend, I think my brother at that point was teaching summer courses at New York Film Academy at Princeton. And between him and a family friend, they like got me into like a summer program for free. It was like a free ride. So I just had to pay for the film, 60 millimeter film. So that was the first moment that when I shot on 60 millimeter film. I was 14 years old, and it completely changed me and completely changed the way I looked at things and how a film is made. Um, and I felt like I was more naturally um, I had more natural talent for filmmaking than acting.
And now, as it relates to writing, because you wrote this whole thing by yourself,
Yeah.
and did you do you have like let's say there's a aspiring writer watching this right now. They want to know how they can write a feature script. Like, is there a process that you go through? Do you beat it out? Do you have a board? Like, what? How do you do it, and how do you get inspired? You know, is it like a discipline thing where every day at a certain time you're going to sit down and write no matter what? Like, do you have a process for writing, or you just kind of
Um,
wing it?
I think I know what it entails now. Um, I should first say Julia, who's worked on post production, has an additional writing credit. She did help um, reimagine an opening for the movie and has done some other things. So, but yeah, the initial script I did write myself. Um, I think a huge part of it really is, at least for me, it was just like hours spent. And there was something very gratifying in knowing that, like, yeah, I had written all these scripts when I was younger, and the fear that I had of coming back to it was very it was a big shock to me that like not only could I still write, but I could actually write significantly better than I had when I was younger. So I think there's a huge element here that's just there was an element of patience and me just willing to return to something that I was kind of scared to do at a
Do you
time in
think it's
my
like
life.
a growth and life experience helps too? Just
Exactly.
having that time to,
Yes. Yes, working in all these different industries, like that's a huge part of this is that I was so absorbed in film. I mean, I was very entrenched in film culture as a kid. I went to film school. I moved to LA. Like I was just constantly surrounded by film. So just to get my life to experience other things, it was just hugely beneficial, I think, for me as a writer. In terms of process, really the most important thing for me is to form a routine, get up early in the morning and just write every day. And that for me has always been the key when I work on a project is the more I can condense the time together, the more days in a row that I can work, the better the outcome, or at least the less time overall spent, if that makes sense. Because if I've also tried to write things over the course of a long period of time, and just the process of getting back up to speed of where you were is very time consuming. So I personally like to write in bursts where I'll, at this point in my life, now that I'm not writing every day, I will only like kind of write if I'm working on a new project, which I have started a new one, which I'm hopeful that will come about. But this has really tested my. I wrote half a script, which is very unusual for me, and just kind of stopped. And I'm realizing how much of this is like I have to write. So the answer is I'm really still figuring it out because I've only really successfully made one movie. I wouldn't. I guess I've written a lot of scripts, but they were very experimental and me kind of just discovering my own voice.
Yeah. Um, so your crew consisted of two people,
Yeah.
both of whom are related to you, your wife and your brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Uh, and you had never worked with them before in that capacity, right? Like on a film set.
No, not on film set. No. They had never stepped foot on a film set.
What was that experience like? I mean, people say, don't work with your relatives and
Yeah.
and then especially on something so intimate and stressful as a film set, long hours, you're around each other all the time. You got to deal with problems on the fly. Take us through that. What was that experience like?
Well, Tanya and I have worked together in other capacities. Like we design games together. Um, so I think we have very like different ways of thinking. So we actually work very well together when we're kind of able to focus on a project, on a creative project. She's very good at I don't have like a sort of business mind, I don't think. I'm not very good at organizing my thoughts. You can tell like just the way I kind of speak and think, I think is very scatterbrained. And it's probably the way I used to write. And so I've had to find a way to like formalize that. But Tanya's very good at like she's very organized, very good at like keeping things together. So she's a great like she was a great producer, somebody to help like kind of plan everything and make sure everyone gets 3 meals a day and what are the different meals we get and like just things that I really didn't have um the capacity to even think down because I was trying to take on so much. So she was a fantastic producer from the beginning. And then she also contributed a lot from she was a production designer. She helped a lot with thinking through just because we're around each other all the time. So being able to just constantly spitball and talk about these things is just it really helps a lot. So yeah, I don't know if she like if we made a film with like a real budget, would she come on board? I have no idea. I think we talked about that for a little bit, and I don't think she knows. We'd have to see. But at least in this capacity, when she knows that she's kind of needed and she's good at learning new things and very very she was very like encouraging for me to get this to see this through. So yeah, it wouldn't this movie would not have happened had Tanya not really pushed me to do this. There was a very decisive moment which we talk about in our interview where we were having like drinks or something at this restaurant and we were just going back and forth as to whether or not we were going to 100% do this. So this was a moment of doubt because I had finished the script and as we were debating whether or not to book the Airbnb because we were like as soon as we book this, this is like set in stone. Uh, so we decided to do it, and it was very much her like encouraging me. And then Rupak,
Awesome.
yeah. The other thing I'll say is about Rupak is I think a lot of this is very similar to you, honestly. It not in the sense that I haven't known Rupak like very well. Um, like we did travel to India together, and but he lives in Chicago, so I don't see him very often. I had no idea how he would like be on a film set. in a similar way, like I mean, I knew you were a talented actor 15 years ago. Enough so that I sought you out. But there was also an element, you were I would say the other element of like, I don't know. There was a big part that I did, and Trevor as well. I wasn't certain. There were a lot of elements of like, I don't know how this is going to work out. Um, and I think, yeah, with you, with Trevor, with Rupak, all of those things just kind of, with Tim acting, all of these things just turned out, everyone just was far, far better than I could have ever anticipated. Um,
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that? Because Tim, one of his questions is,
yeah.
what was it like working with the new actors on set?
It was different for everyone. Everyone had a different amount of experience and camera shyness. Um, I've said this to all the other actors, and I think they would agree. I mean, having you on set was absolutely huge, because you weren't only sort of leading this project, but you were very receptive to how everyone acted. You were like an acting coach in between takes, and so you were keeping everyone like really in the movie, 24/7. Uh, so that was a huge help. Had you not come on board and created that like professional environment and get everyone like really excited about this and stay excited about it for from morning till night, I would have probably shot this, I would have ended the day at 10 o'clock or whatever the schedule was. But everyone wanted to keep going, so we kept shooting. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't know. Everyone was great. Like, um, I really liked the combination of experience on set. I liked that we had you to kind of anchor everyone because you had experience. Trevor had experience, but was also like rediscovering himself as an actor. And Chris, like, he's not shy. He's done stand up a lot, so it's not terribly different. And he's just like so fun to work with. I think here's one thing I'll say with Chris and with Tim. I think about the scene where we shot till like 3 a.m. and we just kind of like let the camera roll for hours on Tim, and everyone was just kind of like we were all in a circle, and it was like the end of we were nearing like finishing filming, and I think we were all having like a beer, and everyone was just kind of like shouting at Tim like things to say. Uh,
Yeah.
and I guess yeah, I think improvising with like Chris and Tim, I don't know, it's different. There I didn't know what I was going to get from them. And so that was fun. With you, it was very different. And with Trevor, I think different as well, where I think about the scene where you wake up very angry. And that was one of the most fun scenes I ever had directing. You were just so receptive and so good at like um taking direction. So it was different, fulfilling in different ways.
Yeah. Well, along the same lines, another question from Tim is, what scene was the biggest surprise for you while shooting?
When you and Tim, Charlie and Alan have their emotional scene.
Yeah. You
That
weren't expecting that, like it to actually work, or?
I wasn't expecting like the hairs to stand up on my arm. Like I remember feeling like that was the moment I realized we were doing something really special. It
Yeah.
was just such a powerful scene, and it like hit the tone of what I was going for so perfectly. Of being like this kind of tragedy. I think there could have been an easy way out where this is just played comedically and kind of one note. That was the scene where I felt like there was that tragic depth, but still kept the comedy. And it was exactly what I wanted from this movie. And yeah, that was the moment. It might have been like day 3 or something, right? Where I realized this we might have like truly something special on our hands.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun, intense scene to
Yeah.
shoot. And yeah, and Tim for his first time acting, I mean,
No.
pulled it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely crazy how he really met you halfway in that scene. I think a lot of it was you coaching him and Tim just becoming more and more comfortable, us figuring out how to work with him being in the other room. I think a lot of it was figuring out that like, this is best when Tim kind of comes and sees what's going on,
Mhm.
instead of just locking him in the dark room all day. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's something culminated there, and Tim really nailed it. But
Yeah, and then working with him like together, not in the room, so we could build that sort of connection, and then putting him back in his little booth or whatever, and going from there. But yeah, yeah, that was a fun scene. We had to do it again. We had to reshoot it
yeah,
um,
I
on the
don't know that
last
we
day.
had to. I don't know that we had to, but I think part of it was like because that scene was so perfect and the lighting wasn't ideal when I looked at it, that I felt it was worth the time to reshoot it. Um, Now that I have like editors on board, I don't even know which one we're going with at this moment. But
Nice. You
I
have
can at least say
options.
that
Yeah.
the first takes are now more like we can consider them more because they can be brightened basically.
Hmm. Did you notice a difference at all, like in terms of the performance from that first shoot of it and a couple days later when we did it? I mean, we did that. Wasn't that on the last day, or was it the last night before
Probably last
I
night.
had to fly out?
Yeah, that would
Did you
make
see?
sense.
Did it seem like it was like one day was better than the other, or
No, I think I think on day like two, you guys hit like a plateau. We all did. And I think at that point, it was just you had set the bar so high. Yes, maybe incrementally it was getting better and better, but I think at a certain point, it was just like everything just kind of came together. I think the first day there were like some rough starts here and there. I would say the first scene, which is another one we reshot, and that's maybe a better example because that was the very first thing we shot and the very last thing we shot. And in that, I would say yes, there is definitely improvement.
yeah?
But looking at day three and day six or seven, not as like I don't think there was as much because
Okay.
you guys were already in such a good groove.
Yeah. Yeah, we all gelled so well together, and
Yeah.
it's just people that had never worked together coming together and living in this house
Yes.
um, for a week, and it just worked.
Yeah.
Um,
Not only was it family coming in, but yeah, the four of you, the four actors, were all coming from different parts of my life. Um,
yeah.
I had no idea how you guys were going to get along. Were you going to be okay in this house together? But it was really wonderful to see.
Um, so this film involves a human AI relationship. Um, Tim's Another question from Tim is, do you expect there to be human AI relationships in the future?
Of course, it seems increasingly obvious that this is like a thing. I feel like we kind of were a little bit ahead in the sense of like I didn't want this to feel like a sci-fi movie. I know there's like Her and other movies about like human AI relationships that they we're I think we were at a time where it's no longer sci-fi. And so I really felt like we should make something that simultaneously feels like it takes place today and a little bit in the future is how I've described it. And the closer we get to release, the more I'm like, uh, I don't even know if the little bit in the future part is really even there. It seems we're very much on the precipice of this.
How do
Um,
you feel about that? Does that concern you? I mean, humans and AI instead of having like human to human connection?
yeah, it does. That's what the movie's about, I think, in a lot of ways for me.
Yeah. So where does that lead? What's going to happen?
I talked to Tim about this a little bit. Uh, one of the things where you say when you asked me about like what changed, and I was saying how getting away from film was very helpful. Working in tech as a filmmaker who like is interested in like art house film was very like eye-opening to me. And I think that's where I really like really saw people talk about technology in a way where I really didn't think it was real. And uh I didn't think people I want to put this as like delicately as I can, but I wasn't expecting to see people who are so intelligent be so uh confident that art was going to be tailor-made. I had a very like in-depth conversation with somebody who I respect like crazy, and they were very convinced that the future of art was that AI was essentially going to like self-cater art to people. And for me, that really like kind of I have mixed feelings about it. I'm sure there's a place for that, but I also, for me, a lot of the best art that I think I've experienced and I think other people experience, I don't think I'm the only one in this boat, would say it has something to do with the human to human connection that's like translated through the medium. You feel connected to another human who's in another place and time in many instances. Um, so that just knowing that like there was this whole other definition of art for from really thoughtful people was eye-opening to me. And that I think was concerning in a way that I felt
Yeah.
I think I expressed as well as I could in this movie.
Well, these people aren't really creative types, right? They're more like programmers, like analytical or
Um,
mathematical. There's
no, yeah, a lot of engineers and designers. I mean, there's a lot of art. There's a lot of art that goes into um, design, graphic design. Uh, the a lot of products that are made in tech are the fusion of engineers and designers working together. But there, I worked in so not only did I work in VR, but then afterwards I worked with Tim as well in like a startup environment. So there was in that entrepreneurial area, there were, I think, a little bit more it wasn't as business minded as you might think. There were a lot of people who had like creative backgrounds, like me. So I think, yeah. Um, yes, to the to in most cases, you are correct that a lot of people were coming with just a very strict technology background. But
so even the creative people in that field are sort of I don't know what you'd call it, nihilistic about the future of
well,
creativity in
I
art.
shouldn't.
Like,
I'm thinking about one specific conversation, so I don't want to like overshadow or like speak to like a bigger population in any way. I was also in like kind of little pockets at Google, and there were like very much the like the VR team was like kind of the cool team to work at that time, and Area 120 where the startup area was very like not representative of the rest of Google. Um, so the I think the more creative types would have tended to be in that area. Uh, but I don't know for certain. But what I would say is that that attitude was not nihilistic when I had this conversation. That's the part that was so shocking to me.
oh,
It was
they think it's a good thing.
excited about it. Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I
Huh.
couldn't wrap my head around that. And it took me a while to realize how sincere that attitude was.
Why? Why is it a good thing in their mind to suck the soul out of everything?
Yeah. Um, I don't think they're looking at art as they're looking at art as like maybe
Commodity.
quantifiable in some way. And so I think the argument that I've seen sort of echoed throughout tech is that which I think is probably where this person was coming from, who was very much ahead uh, in that thought area. At the time, nobody was really talking about this as if it was coming in the coming years. Um, I think the argument is that if art can be made specifically for you, tailor made for you, that it's more powerful than if it's made for say 100 or 1,000 people or a million people. Um, I think I'm judging from what I know about you. I think you would probably see things a little bit more the way I see them, which is that it's kind of the opposite, where it's like a piece of art that speaks to a million people is more powerful than a piece of art that only speaks to you. And that's the human soul aspect, I think that you're referring to.
I think the artist, when they're creating something, if it speaks to them, it's like the most powerful. If you're doing something that you're passionate about, you're creating a piece that, has meaning to you, that tends to, as opposed to like art by committee, where you get a whole big writer's room and then kind of everything
Yeah.
gets, you know, dialed down um, to please more people. But yeah, it seems like, yeah, I don't know, tailored to the individual,
Well,
like pandering.
that's a good point that you bring up that like a writer's room is kind of trying to make it more accessible to more people. So that's an interesting point that you make that I think actually kind of contradicts what I was saying. But I do agree with you that I think there's many different ways of consuming art and entertainment, and those two words and those two things are very interchangeable in many ways. Um, I think a lot of people don't really watch or experience something for art. It's kind of a little bit of a dirty word in the tech world, I learned. So I think that's a
Art, really?
yeah, I'm always surprised by that, I think, because I when you say that word, I think a lot of people roll their eyes or don't again, they don't see it as quantifiable. It's a subjective measure. Um, and that I think makes a lot of people uncomfortable who are trying to really quantify and think of the world as measurable as much as possible.
So they're seeing it like a commodity. Like if we can create this thing that,
Yeah.
appeals to more people or
Yeah.
to one person to a higher magnitude, it's more likely to sell or it's more likely to be successful and increase page views on our app or whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
it's like commoditized.
Yeah. I think that it's missing the point a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's like, that's not unique to the tech world. I think that's a lot of Hollywood too, right? I mean, that's,
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's why I like more auteur-driven film. And it's just my experience too with movies was me alone. Uh, like I had older siblings, so a lot of my like the at least like when I really fell in love with film, I was watching a lot of these movies by myself, not in a theater. It was like old films, foreign films. So I felt like I was connecting on a human level to someone from another place and time. That to me was like the real powerful pull of what a film can do. I don't, yeah, I never really, maybe the right way to look at that, the writer's room notion, and having multiple writers, it's not a bad thing, but I do think the more voices you put together, maybe the more people you can bring in, but I think the less it becomes harder to get a very, very deep connection. And that very deep connection comes from usually what I think you're saying is somebody putting their everything into something and somebody else feeling that in some way. You actually transfer the feeling.
yeah.
I don't know how
Speaking of deep connections, this movie deals with like a lack of connection between individuals. And how do you personally find a deep connection with someone?
yeah.
Because writing is a very, you're isolated when you're doing that, editing. Obviously directing is collaborative, producing, but like I guess on a personal level, like how do you connect with other people?
I have very few people in my life that I feel very close to. Um, I think maybe that happens to everyone a little bit as they get older, but maybe maybe I think that's my way of dealing with it is that I just keep very few people very close to me. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a good thing or not, but that's how I deal with it. Yeah, because it's really
Well, that's
hard.
pretty, that's pretty common, right? Especially as you get older,
Yeah,
and it becomes quality over quantity.
exactly. Yeah.
So with those individuals, do you like, how do you make time to like connect with them?
Well, I think there's the personal and um, like there's people that it's not about making time. It's about finding, for me, finding like ways to integrate uh that into your life. So, like with Tanya working on this, when you're saying like it might be hard to work with family, a lot of that was for me, and I think for her too, is we're enjoying that time together. So if it's integrated in some way to like where it's helping one of us or both of us, um, that becomes becomes like a sort of constant thing that happens. So I don't feel like I'm making time in that regard. I feel like I just really try to find people and ways to create interaction that is meaningful. I don't know. Maybe it's a good question. Maybe I'm like skirting around it. It might be just a way of me saying that like my professional life and my personal life are very like fused together for better or worse.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I, I think you can make the argument that like a project like this, where you're working on it with your wife,
Yeah.
you're creating something together. That's very meaningful. It's not just sitting around, whatever, which does have its value. But how cool is it that you guys made a movie together? I mean, you could look back on it in 10, 20 years and be like, yeah, we that's one of our accomplishments together.
Yeah, it's one of the big reasons that I wanted to do this was to show our son something that like, hey, this was us. This is what your dad wanted to do his whole life. If it doesn't lead to a career, at least I have that. Um, I have a movie that I'm proud of. I never thought I would get to that for the last decade or so. Um, but also the way that I wrote this, I now consider you a good friend because this week was so special, but the week of filming. But I originally wrote these parts for people that are pretty close to me. Um, so I originally had thought this would be I would know everyone, and a lot of people would know each other. So because of the way events happened, uh, yeah, you and Trevor came, I mean, you especially came from like pretty far back in my life. So it was sort of a wild, uh, yeah, it was interesting how that played out. I'm glad that you're interviewing me for this because that's the way that this film been would have been very different. And it would have been just a group of people who knew each other originally. But because you came on board, Trevor, who, I had worked with him in the past, but we weren't very close leading up to this movie. And now like, a lot of new people working on this film that I've never talked to until a year ago. Um, it's taken on a different shape, which is great. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. So you have a son now.
Yeah.
The future with all this technology is in a lot of ways concerning. How do you see yourself preparing him for that, or so that doesn't end up in a relationship with an AI?
I don't, the funny thing I'll say is that a lot of people who watch this movie will talk about Charlie in a way where like he's very much the normal character, for lack of a better word, the normal character. It's always about Travis being weird. I always just kind of gently remind people that like Charlie is married to an AI. That
Yeah,
there's an equally interesting component there worthy of study. I think it's a testament, one, to your performance, and two, to the fact that we made something special, to the fact that people aren't even really questioning Charlie in that regard. Um, I think that's something that is a testament to what we did. Um, so I guess what I'm getting at is like I don't know that that I'm in any way trying to say like nobody should have a relationship with an AI. I don't think that's. I don't think that's like any kind of statement. Or what is the right type of relationship with an AI if you're going to have one? I don't know. I don't want to go into that, but yes, I do personally feel that technology is in a kind of a scary place right now. I have no idea how I'm going to protect my son. I'm going to play it day by day. I think it's as long as I keep it at the forefront of my mind and really try to find ways to translate um, that I will something I'm gonna have to figure out.
Yeah. Uh, I got a couple questions from Chris, and then we can wrap it up if you want.
Yeah, sorry, this sound
Um,
is
how long does it usually take to come up with a title for a movie?
that's a good question actually because um sorry about this. Uh the original script was called Alan and I didn't know the title until like several months after filming. Um sorry, my curtain, my light is like right in my face.
That's all right.
Apologies.
We're almost done.
Now we're good now. Yeah, there's no great answer to that. I don't think about titles until like well after. I think I originally called it Alan just because anything that deals with AI previously has always been called usually the character or it's like her AI. There was one also in like the late early 2000s. It was just the name of the person, the AI character. So I kind of did that by default, and it wasn't until later I was like, that's not the right title for the movie. Um, so it doesn't necessarily take me a long time. It comes naturally well after the script is done, usually.
Yeah. Are there any other projects you would think about revisiting?
Yeah, that's the other nice thing about having a big library of work I've done is that as I continue to work, I'm drawing from a lot of these things because in many ways they were never realized projects. They were never projects that were quite finished for me. So yeah, the script I'm writing right now is taking many threads from past scripts and just kind of like placing them together in different ways. I have a feeling that that's how I'm gonna write moving forward if I'm lucky enough to keep writing. That I'm just gonna pick and pull from a lot of my past projects.
Gotcha. I have a random question. That camera in the background, it looks like the camera we used to shoot the big break, right? Is that always set up, or did you do that just for these interviews?
Just for these.
What's that?
Just for these.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I was like, this is the only
Um,
where I could get like a bookshelf, and I knew I was gonna do like 12 of these in a row. Um, you were right though. You told me the sun was gonna hit my face, and it is now. But yeah, I don't have a great like lighting setup here, so now I
it's
know.
all right. I think we did it. We pulled it off. Is there anything else you want to say or mention about this project, your life? Anything you think would be important to know?
Um, I think you, Luke, wrote something that I think everybody contributed in a way. There are a couple of moments throughout this process and things that people did. I think of like when Trevor kind of made everyone go in a circle at the end of shooting and just like told everyone to say their favorite thing. I think of the email that you sent when we were done filming that just like really explained like how much that week meant to you. Um, and if anything, these like 12 hours of interviews that I've done now is a really nice recollection of that week. Like clearly that week was really special for everyone who was there. And it's really nice to just have this on record. And if people do actually dig
Yeah,
into this, they can kind of just see why this movie worked out the way it did with the resources we had. It's just because something really special happened. I can't quite explain it, but it was the right people in the right place at the right time for the right amount of time, where we really pulled off something truly like I've said this before, but it's very rare in my life where I've set out to do something ambitious and it actually turns out better than what I had anticipated. This might be the only time in my life where truly just everything kept spiraling in like a positive way. And I really believe there's something special here. And I've said this time and time again that it really is, it comes from the four performances. You, Tim, Trevor, Chris. Like it's just four amazing performances that we somehow all pulled off together. Uh, so I hope
Yeah,
people
but
get
I gotta say, we can't sell yourself short here because, as the leader of this whole thing, you arranged it, you inspired everyone, you believed in us. So I want to thank you for that and it's giving me the opportunity to be a part of it and remembering me from all those years ago and reaching out and just having the balls to do something like this. It's a big undertaking and you did it and you're sticking with it and that is really cool. So thank you for that. It's an inspiration.
thanks, Luke. Yeah, that means a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Avi. This has been great.
Thank you, Luke.